lot of patients are taking anticoagulation. We also have patients who aren't, but probably should be. Bleeding is always an issue, and so there are two papers here at the ESC meeting that we want to talk about at the present time. And I'm with Dr. Paul Burton, who is an MD, PhD. He's Vice President of Cardiovascular and Metabolism and Medical Affairs at Janssen R&D. First off, thank you very much. You've got one here that's really large. It's like about 60,000 people, and you're looking at about 10 million electronic records from the Department of Defense. So what is this study?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So this study was designed in collaboration with the Department of Defense, with us, Janssen, and also in response to the FDA. And it asked the question, what is the rate of bleeding in patients taking Xarelto in the real world? And to do that, we needed to look in a large database, which the DoD offers. We were able to look very carefully at the rates of major bleeding in the real world, and what we saw was a rate of 2.89 patient bleeds per 100 patient years. So low rates of bleeding, numerically lower than that seen in the Rocket AF study. Difficult to make.
That's important.
Yeah, difficult to make direct comparisons between this and the Rocket study, but certainly reassuring that the rate of bleeding was low and similar to that seen in the pivotal phase 3 study.
Well, that's always the question, because you've got the great pivotal trials, but then you get everything out into the real world, and then what happens? So this was something that the FDA said, let's do a post-marketing analysis and see where we're at.
Exactly right. And again, we found low rates of bleeding, very reassuring, done in a high-quality database, robustly performed.
So that's the first of two trials. So the second one you're looking at here is called the Xantus trial.
Yes.
Tell me a little about that one.
So the PMSS study was done exclusively in the US. The Xantus study was, again, a real-world study done in patients in North America, in Canada, and Europe. And this has just about 7,000 patients. And again, it looks at the rates of bleeding, of stroke, and also of death. Again, what we see here, low rates of bleeding, 2.1 events per 100 patient years for bleeding, 1.9 strokes per 100 patient years, 0.7 deaths per 100 patient years. So very low and reassuring again, and similar to that seen in our pivotal study. So here are now two experiences spanning the globe, again showing very reassuring rates of important clinical events in these studies.
So the take-home message obviously is one relating to safety. Effectiveness we also know at this point, right? We need to get a few more patients on anticoagulation. How do we do that?
It's a great question. I think it calls for collaboration and education. So we have to continue to work with physicians around the world. We have to continue to work with health societies, clinical societies around the world. And importantly, we have to continue to educate patients and physicians of the need for anticoagulation to reduce clinical risk and the need for treatment options. And there are great options available.
I mean, because these are large studies, this should offer some real insight into the bleeding risk. What more can we do? What other studies can be done to help get the message out there these are safe and effective?
Yeah. Well, I think the key is to continue to be committed to this field, committed to patients, and committed to research. And we have an ongoing program called the Explorer program, where we're looking to examine 6 new indication-enabling studies, and those are underway now. And we will continue to explore the use of Xarelto in a broad range of cardiovascular conditions. We know that thrombosis is such an important underpin for patient outcome in these settings, and these studies really are unparalleled in their scope and reach. So we are going to be looking at heart failure, medically ill, peripheral arterial disease, acute coronary syndrome, secondary prevention in patients with risk factors for cardiovascular disease, and finally embolic stroke of uncertain source, or ESUS, so a broad range of patients.
Well, both of these studies being presented here at ESC, and the Xantus trial, that one is a hotline trial.
Indeed. Yes, absolutely. A hotline trial, so real excitement about both of them, and we're thrilled to be able to bring these data to patients and physicians at this meeting.
And we have a lot more from ESC, so please check around. And for CardioSource World News, I'm Executive Editor Rick McGuire.